Hey, it's Chelsea. Thank you so much for being here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the current Mars cycle that we are in the middle of. This cycle began back in October 2021, and it comes to a completion in November 2023. With the recent Gemini full moon that was exactly conjunct Mars, that marked the very critical halfway point of this Mars cycle. So I think now, while Mars is retrograde, is the perfect time to look back to understand what was going on at the time of the beginning of this Mars cycle, so that we can really understand the themes and the cycles that we are working through, both individually and collectively, so that when Mars stations direct January 12th, we can move forward in a way that is empowered and motivated and just really understanding what it is that we want and what we want to be moving towards. So if you're following along on YouTube, I am going to be sharing my screen with you so that you can take a look at the charts along with me. And also, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. So Mars cycles are connected with the hero's journey. And this Mars cycle in particular, I think that there are just so many parallels between this cycle and the novel The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think that the parallels are just so like magical and really beautiful. And because in the story The Alchemist, the main character has a dream. And so he's following this dream that he had. And all throughout the way, he is just questioning, like, because when you have a dream, it's not exactly tangible, but it's something that you can just feel on such a deep level. And so I feel like the journey that we're on is just so connected to that. And then also, when this Mars cycle completes, Mars is going to be in Scorpio. And so that sign is all about alchemy, especially in the final decan where this Mars cycle will be closing out. So the way that we track Mars cycles is it begins when Mars is exactly conjunct the sun. And so it'll make its way around. And once Mars is opposing the sun, like what we just had with the full moon in Gemini, that marks the middle of the Mars cycle. And then finally, once it moves direct again and is conjunct the sun a second time, that is the closing out of the cycle. So this can take anywhere between 25 and 26 months. So throughout this video, I've just filled it with quotes from The Alchemist that I feel match the chart at that particular time. So when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. So when we look at the seeding of this Mars cycle, we can see that Mars is down here in Libra. So if you want to understand how this seeding moment affected you particularly, and because this is going to be an underlying theme for the following 2 years, just be sure to look at wherever 16 degrees of Libra is in your chart. Just take note of what house that's in and what planets in your chart might be interacting with Mars. Or just any significant transits that you might have had going on. But so in the sign of Libra, Mars is in its detriment because it's right opposite Aries, where Mars is the ruler of. So also at this time, you will see that Mars and the sun were exactly conjunct Mercury retrograde. So taking note of the house that Mars is in or the sign that Mars is in Libra, and also taking note of this conjunction, this exact conjunction with Mercury. Like right there, you can just understand that there's going to be an emphasis on relationships and on communication. So it's important to remember that we have relationships with pretty much everything that we experience in this life, because we have relationships with ourselves, the way that we might relate to food or our body, relationships, the way that we connect with money and work, things like that. All of these things are relationships that we have in our lives. So there's also going to be a focus with it being in Libra, partnerships, agreements, energy exchanges, balance. And really with Mercury being there, it's emphasizing the power of the mind to really assist us in taking action and moving towards whatever it is that we want. So, what is going on with Venus, the ruler of Libra at the time of the beginning of this Mars cycle? Libra it's exactly conjunct the South Node in Sagittarius. And so that's really critical because, I mean, Venus is at a really powerful part in the chart. And Venus conjunct the South Node, like that can really point towards like relationships in past lives, or just like a very powerful connection that we have deep within ourselves, like at a very core level of what it is that we value and what it is that we desire. And so right there, that just tells me so much that this Mars cycle is going to close out a very powerful karmic situation in our lives, some sort of karmic relationship, like really tying up loose ends. So also because Mars was conjunct Mercury, Mercury has a very youthful energy. And so that's why I had added everyone when they are young knows their personal legend. At that point in their lives, everything is clear and everything is possible. They're not afraid to dream and to yearn for everything they would like to see happen to them in their lives. It is just so important to allow ourselves to dream in the way that we are taking action and the way that just whatever it is that's pulling us in our life, to really allow it to be something bigger than ourselves that we're moving towards. So the second chart that I have here is the first square that Mars had in the chart. So you'll see that Mars is here at 3 degrees of Gemini, squaring off with the sun at 3 degrees of Virgo. So also don't forget to take note at where this is happening within your own chart. And so this was the beginning of the very long 8-month period of Mars being in the sign of Gemini. That's a very long time for Mars to be in a sign. And because it is in Gemini for the entire, like it retrogrades back and is still in the sign of Gemini. So this is a long journey that we're about to be embarking towards or in. And so this began, so this first square happens 26th of August. So kind of like reflect back to whatever might have been happening at this point in your life to kind of understand where the challenges or where the friction might be arising within your own life. When Mars is in harsh aspects to the sun, so whether it's like a square or an opposition, there's really this like battle within ourselves of like our ego and kind of like an identity crisis in a way, because there is just like so much conflict going on within ourselves and where we want to be moving towards in our life, or just who we want to be, how we want to be expressing ourselves, and how we want to be taking action. So when we look at what else is going on in the chart, you'll see that Uranus is pretty close. It's just a couple degrees away from the North Node. And so, I mean, there might have been completely unexpected changes happening around this time in our lives. But also, again, there is this connection going on. I'm going to use a different color. I wanted to use red because, it's the color of Mars, but it's just going to be kind of confusing in this chart, I think. So you'll see Mars is squaring the sun, but it is in a harmonious air trine with Mercury that had just moved into the sign of Libra. And so really bringing back that Libra energy of like collaboration and balance. And Libra is also a sign of truth. And so understanding truth, whatever that might have meant for ourselves at that time, like truth at a deeper level, especially because tying that back to Venus conjunct the South Node in Sagittarius, when this cycle first began, Sagittarius is also a sign that is deeply connected to truth and whatever beliefs we might have. But so with this air trine with Mars and Mercury, again, it's bringing emphasis to the mind and to collaboration, to connecting with other people. And also that quote that just came to my mind that says, people come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. However brief these interactions that we might be having with people, however brief they are, they can still be really powerful in contributing towards our pursuit of our own personal legend. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, because this Mars cycle is a time of completing karmic relationships and karmic cycles, because of Venus being on the South Node when this all began. And so, I mean, in situations like that, sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what these connections might mean as they're happening. But then as time goes on, it really just starts to make sense and starts to become full circle. So what else is going on in this chart? Is there anything? Yeah, so the Uranus North Node conjunction there, kind of really contributing to, I mean, who knows what, kind of just everything being up in the air. And especially because this was one of the times when Uranus and Saturn were in a square. And this, I've mentioned the Saturn-Uranus square so many times. This was a cycle that also began back in 2021. And so this is something that we had been working through for a long time at this point, throughout the duration of this Mars cycle. And with Saturn in Aquarius, again, another air sign here, with Saturn in Aquarius, that is like our foundations, our structures, and our routine. And with Uranus there in Taurus, that's really kind of disrupting it and really shaking things up. And really kind of, I mean, lending to ways of changing a course of action in our lives. So when you're at this point, we're in it, right? The first square, when you can't go back, you have to only worry about the best way of moving forward. Plans are changing, right? And I mean, yeah, plans are changing. Things were playing out differently than we were expecting, but all the while we're moving forward and we are really learning lessons. So this is a crucial point of this Mars cycle. So think back to the end of August, just a few months back, to kind of, again, like start to piece together, connect these dots of whatever cycles or themes you were working through in your own life. So now we move to the recent full moon in Gemini that was exact December 7th. Life is really generous to those who pursue their personal legend. And so this is where the dreamy sort of energy starts to come in, because in between this time of this Mars square and the opposition with the sun, in between that time, so you'll see here, Mars at 16 degrees of Gemini. And isn't it amazing how we start to connect these dots? Because Mars began this cycle at 16 degrees of Libra. And so this placement would be in a trine with where it is that Mars began this cycle down here at 16 degrees of Libra. So here we are, 16 degrees of Gemini, exactly opposing the sun at 16 degrees of Sagittarius. Really highlighting again, Sagittarius, truth, belief, and Gemini, collaboration and connecting with others. So again, this is where, as I had mentioned, like the time in between August and December, when Mars began its retrograde journey, which I believe was up here, which was, I think that was at 25 degrees of Gemini, if I remember right, somewhere around there, might have been a couple degrees after, somewhere towards, it was in the final decan of Gemini. This was when we started getting into that Mars Neptune square. And so this is, it's funny how, like so far what we've looked at has been Mars in air signs, because that would really be contributing to the mind and focus and thought. But now Neptune comes in, dreamy Neptune, where I kind of like covered up dreamy Neptune that is really close to Jupiter. Jupiter was Jupiter and Neptune, I think they were closer than this at one point. Yeah, they were, because Jupiter was retrograde and had just recently stationed direct at this point. And so this is the dreamy abyss of Pisces, really kind of overpowering Mars and really, lending its influence throughout this Mars cycle, because this is the crucial halfway point of this Mars cycle. And so really surrendering to our minds, we're now seeing is becoming a theme here, allowing ourselves to kind of loosen grip and just flow wherever it is that we are being taken. Something that was happening throughout the story of the Alchemist was that Santiago, the main character, he had this dream of going to the pyramids in Egypt from Spain to find this treasure. And so like right at the beginning of his journey, he ended up getting robbed. I don't want to give away too much of the story in case you haven't read it and you want to read it. But so because the main character, like Santiago, he had gotten robbed right as he was setting off for this journey, he had to course correct. And this course correction led him to these beautiful experiences along the way. But these experiences, and here's some Saturn influence here, these experiences, they kind of were like more than he had bargained for. Like he ended up staying in a certain location for like a year or longer as he was working towards his goal, because he had to course correct, because his plan of action had completely changed. But so it's kind of beautiful too, how now we're starting to see, like with this Saturn influence again of foundations and structures, it's really recreating our belief system at a foundational level, like going deep into our roots. And now this is where the Venus conjunct the South Node, when this Mars cycle began, like that is where this is coming through too. Just this deep, because the South Node, it's like we have experienced this already at such a deep level, and so deep that it has carried through, it's bled through our present life now. And so it's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting. And because this aspect with Neptune, it's a square, it's triggering, it's creating challenges, it's creating friction. Mars is retrograde, like just in an area of resistance with the dreamiest. And when you look at Mars is all about precision and just being so direct. But Neptune in Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces, it is so dissipating and expansive. And it's like, good luck pinpointing anything with that kind of energy. And so Mars is learning these lessons of surrendering to the dream. And also, when we have dreams, and omens were another big part of the story, The Alchemist. And so, like, listening to things that aren't quite of the conscious mind, it's not quite logic. It's something else that you have to tap into to really allow yourself to be led by dreams, to be led by the subconscious mind. And because so often, like, dreams, they contain these symbols that we try to figure out. And sometimes we think that we know exactly what it means with our conscious mind, but then there might be some sort of exterior situation or something that comes through that shows us, like, no, it's not what you thought it is. It's this. And so often that alternative that we aren't expecting, it can be so much beautiful than that of what we did expect to happen. And so I think such an important point of this critical midway point of this Mars cycle is allowing ourselves to dream, allowing ourselves to surrender to the beauty and the magic and the essence that surrounds us. Because so often when we have that precision, that Mars focus, when it's like so strengthened, it's easy to miss all of these other things in the peripheral, because that's not what we're focusing on. Like, focus, it can only be so pinpointed that we miss so many other things. So that's really where this midway point is taking us right now. So to understand what this particular phase means for you in your chart, just take note of this 16 degrees of Gemini, and also Sagittarius. What houses are these in for you? And if you want to kind of add an extra dimension, look to see where Jupiter and Neptune is. But so also another aspect of this, I didn't want to go too deeply into this because I already kind of did a deep dive during the full moon in Gemini video. But Mars and the moon here is really, again, adding this dreaminess and kind of like an obscurity. Like I said, like, you think something is one way, but it ends up being just completely different. And so with Mars and Gemini, who's the ruler of Gemini? That's Mercury. Mercury is in a tense aspect with Jupiter as well. And so this is creating a T-square, again, an area of friction that is really forcing us to change. I mean, sometimes when we just get so comfortable, we would never, if we were just comfortable all the time, we would never change. And so really surrendering into that uncomfortable kind of vibe right now is so important in moving towards where it is that we want to be. Doing things that make you feel uncomfortable and just getting used to feeling uncomfortable in order to initiate that positive change. And again, tapping into the subconscious mind with Pluto, going into the depths. And really, it just makes me think again of the South Node, of Venus being on the South Node when this whole journey began. So also, I think it's important to just, as I'm kind of walking you through in this video, just reflect to the relationships in your life. Like, what lessons and themes have you been learning with relationships in your life, or whatever it is that you are in relationship to at this time? And since October 2021. So here we are now in the future. At this point, Mars will have moved out of the shadow. I believe actually it might be exactly at where it was when it had initially stationed retrograde back in October 30th. And so now we are in the future, March 16th, 2023. So this is when we are having the waning square with the sun over here at 25 degrees of Pisces. And so let's see what this says. Before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It does this not because it is evil, but so that we can, in addition to realizing our dreams, master the lessons we've learned as we've moved toward that dream. What did you learn during this Mars retrograde period? This Mars retrograde began, as I'd mentioned, October 30th. It ends January 12th. And so, I mean, that's when it was the strongest. Of course, there's a shadow period, pre-shadow, post-shadow. I don't remember those dates. Well, I guess this would be the post-shadow. And maybe the pre-shadow would have been the initial square. Maybe that's how that works. I think that might be how that works, about around that time. But so anyway, it is okay, so that's the point at which most people give up. It's the point at which, as we say in the language of the desert, one dies of thirst just before the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. So keep pushing forward. Do not let the challenges that may have arisen during this Mars retrograde cycle, do not allow these challenges and these struggles and just this opposition to get you down. Remember your dream. Remember what it is that is pulling you at such a deep soul level, and surrender to it and allow yourself to keep moving through it. So at the time of this square with the sun, we've got a lot going on. So Mercury is just very present throughout this Mars cycle, because you'll see Mercury is here at 24 degrees of Pisces, Neptune is at 25 degrees, and the sun is at 25 degrees. So Mars is experiencing, like, this is probably going to be a pretty challenging time mid-March 2023. I would imagine it's going to be a time of, just feeling like it's like the retrograde, like Mars is finally out of that shadow period and is moving towards uncharted territory at this point. Like, it's moving in spaces that it has not been in a while. And it's just getting conflict coming in through the sun, like through our ego or our will, our desires, like our expression. And again, Neptune just really making sure, like, Mars, did you learn? Like, do you remember what we talked about back in December? Like, remember what we talked about a few months ago? And it's just adding to that dynamic, adding these layers, adding these lessons, really empowering us throughout these themes and these cycles that we are going through. And then Mercury is there kind of trying to be a translator, but Mercury is not like strong in the sign of Pisces, because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. Mercury likes to also have a sharp mind, but so it might not be that clear when Mercury is in Pisces, because it's so dreamy, and Mercury is now having to surrender to the subconscious mind and tap into the dreams. And this is where we start to really see the alchemical transformation that is taking place at this point of the final decan of Pisces. And if you remember, that's where Jupiter was at the time of the midway point of this Mars cycle during the Gemini full moon. And at that time, there was so much being completed, being purged, cleansed, released from our lives. And it's almost like we're returning to that, to the sun is like illuminating whatever it is that we might have cleared away, and whatever it was that might have been preventing us from moving forward and with clarity. And it's just really making sure that we've understood those cycles and themes so that we can move forward as Mars is moving into that uncharted territory, move forward feeling empowered and feeling confident and courageous and just ready to move into something new. So what else is going on at this time? We have, Mars is in a harmonious aspect in a sextile with Venus. So that's nice, getting that little boost of harmony, truth, compassion, diplomacy, and kind of, I want to say, revisiting those initial themes again of Venus in Sagittarius on the South Node when this all began. What is it that you believe? What is it that you value on a very deep level? And how can we move forward in a way that is honoring of what it is that we value and what's important to us? And so what else do we have going on here? Venus is in a square with Pluto. This is probably going to be a really challenging time, not going to lie. It's going to be a very powerful and transformational time. And so, look in your chart to see where the end degrees of Gemini is in your chart, the end degrees of Pisces. And if you want to add an extra dynamic, look to see what's going on towards the end of Capricorn in your chart, because that's where Pluto is. And that's a powerful position for Pluto too, because Pluto is going to be moving into completely uncharted territory as well. Pluto, Mars, Venus, like just look at all of these planets that are going to be moving to new signs around this time. And we have Saturn that would have just moved into Pisces. That's gonna be a big shift of energy. I want to say around this time, beware of distractions, addictions, deception. And beware of also, because it's possible, when I say deception, we can be deceiving ourselves too. And so I think it's going to be very important to stay grounded during this time, especially because the only Earth that we have in the chart is Uranus and Pluto. And because I wouldn't really, the moon just moves so fast. So Uranus and Pluto are really there to break down some foundations and structures. So, do whatever you can to stay grounded at this time and to remember what it is that's driving you. I really don't like the saying, what is your why? Because I just feel like if you've ever been in sales or like any kind of self-help thing, like it's just such a cliche. You hear it all of the time. But really, what is it that wakes you up in the morning? Or what is it that pulls you forward in life? Like, what is it that excites you? Where do you experience passion in your life? Because I think it's really important to connect with that in order to connect deeply to our points of creation and creativity. So at this time, also, we're going to have Jupiter conjunct Chiron in Aries. And so, be aware of what it is that you are feeling, and allow yourself to actually connect to what it is that you're feeling, and just don't try to distract yourself from these emotions. Be aware of spiritual bypassing, of this time. I'm thinking there just might not be as much clarity as we would want, moving out of that shadow phase that Mars, I mean, and this is the mark, this is the ending of an 8-month process of Mars moving through the sign of Gemini, going back, and now it's finally about to be moving forward. Like, this has been a process. And so just allowing yourself to decompress too. And because Mars is going to be moving into the sign of Cancer again, like Mars, the challenges that Mars is going to be experiencing, like, it does not end here just because Mars is now retrograde out of it, or moving direct out of its shadow, because Mars is in its fall in the sign of Cancer because it's exalted over here in Capricorn. So this is going to be a time, like, I feel like the lessons of flow, it's going to be like, do you remember what we said about flowing and about dreaming, about surrendering to the subconscious mind, not trying so hard to figure things out? Do you remember all that? Because yeah, now is a really good time to be listening to your body and your intuition and really understanding how certain things that you want to be moving towards, like, how does it make you feel? Are you moving towards it because you really want to, or is it because you feel like it's something that you should be moving towards? I think that's going to be a really important question to ask yourself or ourselves at this time. Because if something isn't feeling right, like, we're going to be feeling it in our body, with Cancer being such an intuitive sign. Wow, what a powerful, wow, that's going to be a pretty powerful, lots of alchemy taking place, lots of opportunity happening because of the transformation that will be coming around that time. So it's true that everything has its personal legend, but one day that personal legend will be realized. So each thing has to transform itself into something better and to acquire a new personal legend until someday the soul of the world becomes one thing only. And so this is a chart of the ending of this Mars cycle. When Mars is conjunct the sun in Scorpio at 25 degrees, November 18th, 2023. Isn't it funny how we're seeing these, the continuation of these degrees? Because before it was at 25 degrees of Gemini, and now it's at 25 degrees of Scorpio. And so finally, Mars in its power. Mars is at home in the sign of Scorpio. And this is really when the alchemy sets in, when the alchemy is just, it's transformed our lives. I'm really excited to see, I don't know, just imagine what your life might look like at this time in November 2023. And allow yourself to dream. What do you want your life to look like? Allow yourself to tap into that version of yourself or that reality, whatever it is that you want to create. The thing that I think is so beautiful about this Mars cycle is the Neptunian influence, the Piscean influence, and having to connect to the dreamy aspect of life and the magic, and sensing what we can't see, hear, or, you know, connect with our actual senses, but picking up on what's around us that there is no logical explanation for, and allowing these things to pull us forward. Like, the most beautiful things in life, sometimes, so often, you can't explain. And I think that's a big part of the lesson of this journey, is because of the connection with other people and the communication that's involved throughout this story, really knowing what our personal legend is, and not allowing outer noise or situations or people, not allowing that to deter us from experiencing and achieving our own personal legend. And I mean, we're all so unique. All of our blueprints of our souls, like, we're all here for completely different things. And I think that is what makes this experience so beautiful, is the ability to collaborate, to connect, to learn from people that are so different from ourselves, and really just experience it all, allow ourselves to experience without expectations and without such rigidity, being open to what is unfolding, and allowing ourselves to be open enough to notice that when an opportunity is presenting itself, so that we're not closing ourselves off to it. And with Venus on the South Node, and Venus being so close to where this cycle initially began. It began at 16 degrees of Libra. Now Venus is here at 11 degrees of Libra with a harmonious aspect to Mercury. And it's funny, now Venus and Mercury have switched signs, because in the beginning, Venus was in Sag, Mercury is there. So there's just like this symbiotic collaboration that's going on. And not only that, but like this this desire to assist in moving forward, like all of the different planets, the ways that they are contributing to the hero's journey, to this unfolding that is happening and taking place in the way that we are taking action and what it is that we are moving towards. And then again, with the opposition to Uranus, like allowing ourselves to dream, especially with, we've got a nice sextile with Pluto assisting in the alchemy, assisting in the transformation, and just surrendering to that. So yeah, I think for now, that's about all that I think I want to get into. I think that it's such a powerful time to transform the way that we take action, and just our own will, our own desire. And what is the character that you want to be? What do you want to be moving towards? What do you want to create? Allow yourself to dream. And then, so again, to kind of foreshadow what this might mean for you, take note of what house 25 degrees of Scorpio, like where that is in your chart. Take note of what planets you may have that is interacting with Mars during the closing out of this very transformational and alchemical cycle. And again, like kind of going back to the most beautiful things not being able to be explained. Like, think about alchemy, thinking about turning lead into gold, and that process of just creating magic out of something that is just so seemingly simple. So because of the challenges that we're experiencing, that the opposition and the challenges, the tension, the friction that is arising during this Mars cycle, if you ever feel like you need a boost of energy, or you just need to add some heat into your life, whether it's like assisting stagnant digestion, like adding heat to that, or adding heat to your passions, like igniting the flames within your life, you can work with herbs that are ruled by Mars to help with that. They can assist in our vitality and our energy. help us, yeah, just kind of like when we're feeling burnt out. And also it can deflect negative energy, Mars herbs. And they can assist with independence and assertiveness, taking action. So I've just listed a few here. Of course, you can always look, look deeper into it if you feel drawn. Basil, black pepper, cumin, cayenne, dragon's blood, garlic, juniper, and mustard, to kind of muster up that energy and vitality within yourself. Yeah, so Mars herbs are really helpful with protection. So if ever, like, kind of a way to think about it is Saturn herbs are also helpful with protection, but they kind of offer us a shield, whereas Mars is, it's kind of like a sword when it comes to working with herbs. So whether you feel drawn to cook with them, infuse energy or intention into them so that they can assist you with your projects or whatever it is that you want to be working towards or moving towards in your own life, these herbs are great for that. So thank you for being on this journey with me, on this hero's journey, this journey to understand our own personal legend. I am honestly, I think this is going to be a really beautiful cycle. And I think it just feels really good to kind of pause, reflect back to how different our lives might have been just 12, 13 months ago at this point when this cycle began, or maybe 14 months ago. Time is going so fast. It's crazy. But just to reflect at how far we've come in that last year and imagine and dream how far we want to go with the next 11 months when Mars completes this cycle. So thank you for being here. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also, please feel free to comment what Mars related themes and cycles you might be working through in your own life. Thank you so much. See you next time.